A single French water utility executive secretly bought Hollywood and lost $33 billion in just 12 months. But behind this catastrophic financial meltdown lies a dark, megalomaniacal strategy that almost triggered the total collapse of the entire French banking system. If you want to understand how pure, unadulterated hubris can obliterate a 150-year-old empire, you need to look at the bizarre, terrifying rise and fall of Vivendi Universal. This is not just a story of corporate failure, it is a masterclass in how unchecked ego, financial engineering, and a delusion called digital convergence vaporized one of Europe's largest industrial crown jewels. To understand how a mundane utility company that supplied tap water to French citizens since the reign of Napoleon III ended up owning Universal Studios, Jurassic Park, and the world's largest music labels, we have to travel back to mid-19th century France. In 1853, Compagnie Générale des Eaux, or CGE, was created by imperial decree. For over a century, CGE was the definition of a boring, stable, and incredibly lucrative business. It had a government-sanctioned monopoly to manage water distribution, waste management, and public transit across France. It was a license to print money. Generation after generation of French bureaucrats viewed CGE as an immovable, indestructible monument of national stability. But in 1994, the board of CGE made a decision that would seal their fate. They appointed a young, fiercely ambitious investment banker named Jean-Marie Messier as their chief executive. Messier was the youngest partner in the history of the prestigious Lazard Frères investment bank. He was brilliant, charismatic, and completely contemptuous of old-fashioned, slow-growth utility businesses. To Messier, water was boring. Pipes were tedious. He looked across the Atlantic and saw the roaring 90s dot-com boom. He saw Silicon Valley. He saw Wall Street minting billionaires overnight. Messier decided that CGE was going to transition from the physical world of water and concrete to the digital realm of dreams, media, and global dominance. In 1998, Messier executed his first symbolic act of destruction. He rebranded the venerable Compagnie Générale des Eaux into a sleek, futuristic name, Vivendi. He wanted a name that sounded alive, global, and completely detached from the dirty business of sewage and tap water. Messier then embarked on an acquisition spree of unprecedented scale, fueled by the stable cash flows of the water division. He bought Cegetel, a major French telecommunications company, and took control of Canal+, the undisputed giant of French pay television. But this was merely the prelude. Messier did not just want to rule Paris, he wanted to conquer the world. And to conquer the world in the late 1990s, you had to conquer Hollywood. The late 90s was the era of convergence, the widely held, yet completely unproven, belief that the companies owning the pipes and internet cables must also own the movies, music, and software running through them. Messier was a fanatic believer in this doctrine. He argued that if Vivendi owned both the distribution network and the content, they would become an unstoppable global superpower. In July 2000, Messier pulled off his ultimate masterpiece. He orchestrated a massive $34 billion three-way merger with Seagram, the Canadian beverage and entertainment giant, and Canal+. Seagram was not just a spirits company, it owned the legendary Universal Studios in Los Angeles, the massive Universal Music Group, and a chain of global theme parks. Overnight, a French water utility executive became the king of Hollywood. Messier relocated himself to New York, purchasing a lavish $17.5 million duplex apartment on Park Avenue, entirely funded by Vivendi. The French media, once skeptical of his rapid rise, now idolized him. They dubbed him J2M, his initials. But as his ego expanded, critics modified the nickname to J6M, standing for Jean-Marie Messier, moi-même, maître du monde, which translates to Jean-Marie Messier, myself, master of the world. He was on the cover of every business magazine, rubbing shoulders with movie stars, directors, and global political leaders. To the public, Vivendi Universal was an unstoppable juggernaut. But behind the glitz and glamour, the financial foundation of the company was rotting. Messier's acquisition strategy was built entirely on a house of cards. To fund his multi-billion-dollar deals, Vivendi did not use cash, they used their own highly inflated stock as currency. When the stock market was booming, this worked beautifully. But in 2000, the dot-com bubble began to burst. Technology and media stocks plummeted. Suddenly, the stock Vivendi was using to buy other companies was losing value rapidly. Worse, Messier had accumulated a colossal pile of short-term debt to fund cash acquisitions, such as purchasing the pioneering digital music platform MP3.com, the legendary video game publisher Sierra and Blizzard Entertainment, and the prestigious educational publisher Houghton Mifflin. By late 2001, Vivendi was drowning in over $30 billion of debt. The core issue was that the digital convergence Messier promised was a complete myth. There was no synergy. A French telecom subscriber in Marseille had absolutely no interest in paying extra to stream a Universal movie on a black-and-white mobile screen with a dial-up connection. The technology was not ready, the consumer demand did not exist, and the acquired companies were operating as independent silos, burning through cash. To keep the illusion alive and prevent Vivendi's stock price from collapsing, Messier resorted to extreme, highly aggressive accounting practices. Vivendi began double-counting revenues across its subsidiaries, delaying the recognition of massive losses, and hiding liabilities in off-balance sheet vehicles. The company was essentially using the reliable, boring cash flows of its original water and environmental division, now renamed Vivendi Environment, to plug the massive, bleeding holes in its media portfolio. In a desperate bid for cash, Messier made his most fatal strategic error. He began selling off shares of the water division. He was literally selling the company's life support system to fund his Hollywood fantasy. By early 2002, the financial reality could no longer be masked by public relations campaigns and grand announcements. The credit rating agencies looked at Vivendi's balance sheet and realized the company was facing a severe liquidity crisis. They downgraded Vivendi's debt to junk status. This downgrade triggered covenants in Vivendi's loan agreements, requiring the company to repay billions of dollars in short-term loans immediately. Vivendi did not have the money. The company was on the verge of defaulting on its loans, which would have triggered a chain reaction of bankruptcies among the major French banks that had heavily financed Messier's ambitions. The French government was terrified. A collapse of Vivendi would not only destroy a national champion but could take down the French financial system with it. The board of directors, led by members of the French establishment who had grown increasingly disgusted by Messier's Americanized, jet-setting lifestyle and reckless spending, decided it was time to strike. In July 2002, during a highly dramatic, tension-filled board meeting, Jean-Marie Messier was forced to resign. He went from being the self-proclaimed master of the world to a corporate pariah in a matter of hours. The aftermath was catastrophic. In early 2003, Vivendi Universal reported a staggering net loss of 23.3 billion euros, approximately $25 billion US. It was, at the time, the largest annual corporate loss in the history of France. The share price had collapsed by over 80% from its peak, wiping out the life savings of hundreds of thousands of retail French investors who had trusted the historic stability of the old water utility. The legal system soon caught up with Messier. He was investigated by both French authorities and the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission for misleading investors and severe accounting irregularities. He was ultimately convicted in France of corporate waste and disseminating false information, receiving a suspended prison sentence and heavy financial penalties. Vivendi Universal was systematically dismantled, sold off piece by piece to pay down the mountains of debt. The legendary Universal Studios and television assets were sold to General Electric, merging with NBC. The water utility division, the true engine that had built the company over 150 years, was spun off completely, eventually becoming Veolia, surviving as a reminder of what the company should have remained. The tragedy of Vivendi is a timeless lesson in corporate greed and strategic delusion. It proves that no matter how big a company is, and no matter how stable its foundations are, it can be completely vaporized when leaders prioritize ego, hype, and financial engineering over real, tangible value. Jean-Marie Messier believed he could bend the laws of economics to his will, but in the end, gravity always wins. If this shocking corporate collapse revealed the terrifying danger of strategic hubris, you must watch our deep dive into the hidden history of how another legendary media empire destroyed itself through a disastrous, multi-billion-dollar merger.